Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see everybody so early in the morning on a Friday. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our subject matter expert, Dr. Professor Kua Ee Heok. I think he's Professor Emeritus, who today will be speaking on the topic, which you will see at the back here. Let me just get my clicker correct, which is aging as good news. And I think the second part is really, really important. We are exploring the church's role in dementia prevention. Now, it's very hard to introduce somebody with so many achievements in life, and I'm so grateful that he has agreed to come and just share the message with pastors and those who are serving the church. So, give me like 20 minutes to get through this first part, which is Professor Kua is a senior consultant psychiatrist and former CEO of Singapore's IMH, the Institute of Mental Health, right? I think he will tell you the story of how he rebranded Woodbridge Hospital to IMH. He's a graduate of the University of Malaya and Oxford University, and he has dedicated his career to advancing mental health and dementia prevention amongst older adults. He founded Singapore's first memory clinic and was the driver behind the Jurong Ageing Study, which I think a lot of us want to come here to hear part of, that thing. And out of that, it inspired the Age Well Everyday movement. And I think he's going to be sharing with us, at least the second part, how you do it. Okay. So Professor is still a practicing psychiatrist with a mind care clinic in the Farrer Park Medical Center. And just a little, if you want to know a bit more, just Google that and you'll find so many interesting things about him. Now, I've had one special piece of information that's very, very special to me, right? So in our early conversations, because we don't invite speakers without having a cup of coffee with them. So, earlier on, we had conversation with him, and I found out that his cousin, Richard Tok, is from Batu Pahat, which is where he is from. And I remember when I was a very young faculty member, I think at 35 or 36 when I first stepped into SBC, I taught his cousin, who was, I think, in his 50s or in his 60s at that time, Richard Tok, who's, I think right now he's a retired Presbyterian minister in Batu Pahat. And so that connection makes him special to us at SBC. I want to welcome him up here to share his talk on.
A very good morning to all of you. I want to thank Dr. Kelvin Chong for this invitation. So in fact, I spoke to my cousin, he's now in Batu Pahat, that I'm going to give a talk here at the Singapore Bible College, and he told me it's a great privilege. I've given many lectures in many parts of the world, over at Boston, at Harvard, and even in Petra, but I think this is a singular honor to be here, to speak to all of you. And we know that it's Dr. Lee Chong Kao in the audience. He told me he's coming. He's a pastor, and no, he's not coming, is he? Yeah. All right. Well, Dr. Lee Chong Kao was a pastor in Trinity Church, and he told me some years ago that in the congregation in the church, there are more people who are elderly than the young people. And this is the phenomenon also in Batu Pahat, even when I visit my relatives in Australia, that is the congregational members are now growing older. Well, we ask ourselves, and I always tell people that growing old is a privilege, denied to many people. So all of you are here, it's a privilege, But we hear so much bad news about growing old. You read the papers, they'll tell you that old people are burden to the community. I don't know why. Old people don't contribute to the economy of the country. We did a study in Toa Payoh and also in Jurong. About 30 to 40% of people are still working. Those above 65 years old, still working part-time or full-time. And so there's always this misconception. There's so much of ageism now, we said. And so today I will tell you some good news. You hear too much of bad news about aging, you know. And you remember a line in the Old Testament, in the book of Isaiah, and it says, how beautiful are the feet of those on the mountain, of those who bring good news. So I want to tell you something on first, epidemiology is a big word. It just means the extent of a problem in the community. As doctors, we work in the hospital and we tend to see people in the hospital. Therefore, we have this impression, you know, that people who are frail, people who are sick. You know. So in fact, I told one of the ministers that next time you want to talk about aging, you should meet elderly people who are also very active, like all of you here. You know. Whenever the minister, before election, go to the day centers or go to old people's home, so the impression the public will be aging equals frailty. You know, so there's a lot of negativity. You know, so we thought if we want to do a study on aging, it must be in the community. That's epidemiology. And I'll give you something a bit of some neuroscience and something simple about the science, you know, and something interventional. You know. So often we tell people the problems. You know, once I spoke to one of the Minister of Health. He said, "Oh, please don't tell me any more problems." What they want is a solution, and I agree. You talk to the minister. There's so much problems in the community. Tell them the solution. Don't tell them the problem. And whatever research we have, it must be of translational relevance. It means that whatever you do, it must be of relevant to people living in Katong, in Woodlands. Then people will benefit. Because I tell my friends in the university that the research itself, we take so much of taxpayers' money. You must give back, rather than say I'll do a study and it's published, I get promoted. But beyond that, what does it mean to people's life? Yeah? Okay. And this is the most interesting part. I come here because Dr. Kelvin Chong is quite certain that here we can stir up a lot of interest on how to start a dementia prevention program. We've started about 10 years now. Now, the big group not far from here at the Kong Min San temple, they have almost 900 people now, you know. The group, every week they meet. It's phenomenal. Over at Tampines, with something for the Malay group, you know, I'll talk to you later on. So I think amongst the Christian group, I've got a patient last week. He told me they have a Bible study group, you know. So I wonder whether it be a nucleus that they can develop besides Bible reading, I mean, other activities that will stir up the mind, help them out in their lives. So the good news, that's sort of the good news. The good news is the life expectancy has extended now. All right. When I was born in Batu Pahat, anyone born in 1948? 48, right? 48 people. At that time, life expectancy in Singapore and those days called Malaya was only about 55 years old. You know, after the war, you know, there was so much of deprivation. You're supposed to live just about 55. My grandmother, you know, a very staunch Christian, went past 80. Wow, it's a big thing in town, you know. Someone survived to 80, you know. Now it's quite common, but after the war, there's so much of diseases, deprivation. But Singapore has done very, very well, isn't it? 82 to 86, you know, and it's something to be proud of. So I tell the minister, we should be proud of, because the Ministry of Health have done many things, isn't it, of programs to help out to lift up the health status of the people living here. You can imagine that in some countries. I asked one Dr. Anne Merriman, who has passed away, a missionary doctor in Uganda, and I asked her, do you see dementia in Uganda? You say, hardly. I say, what do you mean? The people die before 55. Oh, so you see, if you live longer, age is a risk now, but you're younger. But he said people die very young, at 55, out of the AIDS virus. And AIDS virus also killed them off quite early. So I think we should be very proud. So, in fact, somebody from the World Health told me, I find it very strange that Singapore, you're inviting so many Americans and British to come to Singapore University to teach people how to age well. See, all of you should be going to England and America to teach them how to age well. Because England, America, the life expectancy is only about 79 years. 79, the most powerful country in the world, it's just 79 years. England, 81, less than Singapore. But so we have done quite well. And also, it is possible to live 8 years of healthy lives. You grow old. If you retire at 60 and then you live for 20 more years and you're frail, you're sick, you go to the hospital every day. It's terrible, isn't it? If you can live on to 80 years old and healthy and contribute to the community, to the family, to your church, that will be wonderful, isn't it? All right? Okay. And also, what we have in Singapore that is very interesting is that we have started for the first time in Asia a dementia prevention program called Age Well Every Day. Something very awesome, that we think that will benefit the people. It's a big study here. And I must say that sitting in the audience is my friend, Mr. Arthur Lim and David Lim. They're all my partners in crime. We all were together in the first study at the Jurong Point, at level 6, where the team was. It's not been dismantled. But it's the first study, and then we fired the imagination of people. I remember before this was started, I was invited to Boston, to Harvard, to give a lecture. And I told the Americans, it was 2004, that it is possible to do something for prevention, because even now there's no cure, But if we know a lot of information, can we craft them out together and find out who are at risk? Can we do something to prevent? Right? I'll come to that later on. But of course, there's some challenges in aging, and the first thing is about the rising tide of dementia. They all know about, and the demand of health services. So I told the minister, if you can prevent, then you don't have to build more day centers, build more hospitals. The hardware is not too difficult. Singapore, you are fairly rich now. You can build a hospital, But can you fill in the staff? The software is more difficult, get people, got to get people overseas to come in. So if you can prevent, then you can have, you can divert money to elsewhere, to build better parks for all of us, to enjoy our lives, And then aging in place, what are possibilities? Does it mean that when you grow old, that we will have to go to an old people's home? Does it mean that, is that the way? No more nursing homes coming up, If Arthur wants to stay in his own condominium to a ripe old age of 100, why not, What can he do? But the worry is that in Singapore, people are all living a very lonely life, and sometimes loneliness itself is a risk factor for depression, and suicide. A couple of years ago, just last year, I was invited to give a lecture at Chiang Mai, hospital down there. And when I came back, I took a cab back home, and the cab driver asked me, "Where have you been?" I told him, "I just came back from Chiang Mai." "Oh, Chiang Mai, you know what? I want to sell my flat at Ang Mo Kio, and I'm going to retire in Chiang Mai." I said, "That's a good idea." I said, "Hey, that is cheap down there. Real estate is cheap, and the weather is cool, But is that what it is?" And so I asked, "You have some friends down there?" "Well, I'm going to get more people. It's loneliness." So he's trying to get people out there, Okay, and then the escalating cost of healthcare. Just last night I was having dinner with some friends, and I told them that if you have a backache, your doctors, the doctors will say, "Okay, go for an MRI scan." take some medicine, the total hospital bill will be about $1,000 or more than $1,000, So I told him, if someone was at Chinatown, the poor people, if the backache, what does he do? You go just to buy Koyo or Tiger Balm, that's all. That's $5, But the middle class, I'll tell you later on, the research, every time I present my research in the World Health Meeting, the people will say, well, you're telling us the research of your studies of Toa Payoh, Ang Mo Kio, Jurong, those are the working class people? I say, yes. But do you know that the World Health is wanting to know more information about the middle class people? Because in China, there's a sudden mushrooming of almost 350 million people are middle class. And the middle class people consume the most amount of health services. It's not the working class people. You go to private hospitals, see they come and do all kind of tests. But cost is going up. And we also know that the suicide rate, you see, this is a paper published some years ago. The suicide rate was very high in 1999 for Singapore, the second highest in the world, But then it went down, but now it's going up again. So I was interviewed on television, so someone asked me, what's the cause of this rise of suicide rate? So amongst ASEAN countries, the suicide rate for old people, high. And old people is higher amongst the men than the women. So men, we are the endangered species. So the women, I hope you all love your men and spend some time. The depression rate is higher in men than in women. So, but this paper was, after this paper was published, there was a bit of commotion in Singapore. One of the minister rang me and said, "Oh, you shouldn't tell the newspaper about this." It was Straits Times. I said, I told the minister quite friendly that actually that's your job, to find out how we can improve. The time was very, very high. So what they did was, 1995, if you remember, there were very few day centers. So I told the Ministry of Health there should be more day centers for stroke patients or those who have early dementia, because most people are working and they live alone, and then they take their lives. And also, we also work closely with the Singapore Action Group of Elders. Anyone know this group? SAGE, Singapore Action Group of Elders, was run by a very staunch Christian man, a doctor called Dr. Lim Chan Yong at the Serangoon area. But he introduced many things, and also the Gerontology Society and others, an ardent member of the society. We get a lot of public talks, and we want to demystify mental illness. People, wow, mental illness, fear, people have. So if they come out early for treatment, then the recovery is faster. I remember when I first came to work in Singapore in 1981, it was on the first day of the new year, and it was on a Monday. And when I went back home, that time was because we had rented flat at Ang Mo Kio. My neighbor was a chap from a doctor from Tan Tock Seng, and he asked me, "Where are you working?" I told him, "Well, Woodbridge Hospital." He started to laugh. He said, "You just came back from England, you were trained in Oxford University, you want to work in a lunatic asylum." He said, go off, Just realize that there's so much of stigma, and people who work in the mental hospital are tainted by the stigma. So when I left Woodbridge, I was invited to go to university, and later on they asked me to be the CEO of Woodbridge in 1999. The first thing I did was tell the ministry, I'm going to change the name to Institute of Mental Health. Then the minister said, "Well, there's no research down there, there's no training down there." So I told the president of NUS, "Can I bring the research team and the teaching team to IMH then?" So they carry on the training and the research down there, try to demystify it. Because we realized that people with mental health problems will come to see us in our clinic at NUH, usually within a month. But the people who go to Woodbridge because they're so fearful usually have illness about 2 or 3 years, You stay off the fear of it. You come early, outcome treatment better. Right. Right. And also the rising tide. So you see this picture of the Japanese call it the big wave or the tsunami. So I mentioned to the Ministry of Health people, shouldn't use the word silver tsunami. And I tell the newspaper people, don't use it. They're still using it. Tsunami is a destructive force. And all of us here who are older, we are not a destructive force. We are wonderful people coming to help people. They call us a tsunami, a destructive force. But it's not changed. I've heard one member of parliament give a talk on television, still talk about the tsunami, the silver tsunami. So I mentioned that in this, we did our study, and from there we extrapolate that if you don't do anything and go all, the number of cases will go up. Today in Singapore, about 1 million people have above 60 years old. And the Ministry of Health tell us that the Ministry of Health data is 10% of people above 60 will have dementia. That means in Singapore today, you have 100,000 cases. That is huge, You cannot say we just have to be happy with that. Can we do something to bring it down? And that is the challenge for all of us in the research field, Before I move on quickly, because earlier on someone asked me some question about dementia, so that we are all on the same page. What is dementia? All right. So the early symptoms often memory. So they'll tell you about. They can tell you about the Japanese occupation. They tell you the war years. But the first question I often ask them would be, "What do you have for your breakfast?" Then they've forgotten, I'm not going to ask Arthur, what do you have for breakfast? You think about it, it's a short-term memory that's gone off. All right, that's a very early sign. I'll show you something else. And also, after some time, intellectual decline. Somebody who is, 2 days ago, I saw a school teacher, the school teacher. I asked her, what do you mean by education? Forgotten the meaning of the word education, intellectual decline, and then the last part will be the personality change. Someone who is prim and proper, this school teacher, prim and proper, dressed well. Now the daughter told me he went to the marketplace barefooted, very scruffy in appearance, didn't comb her hair properly. The change of the whole personality. And beginning, we didn't know anything about. When I first was involved in training in dementia, was in 1976, almost 50 years ago. We didn't know very much about dementia. But with the memory clinic in NUH, you'll be able to gather from the data bank. That's why big data is important. What is it about this phenomenon? We found it's associated with hypertension and diabetes. But if you control your hypertension, diabetes, you're okay. All right. Because the hypertension goes up, then it ruptures a blood vessel in the brain. The part of the brain dies. So they sometimes call it a vascular dementia. A dementia after a mild stroke. Sometimes the stroke is so mild you don't realize it. It's very mild. A bit of blankness for a while, then you're okay. They call micro hemorrhage, micro rupture. And then it's also involved with head injury. So you see boxers or football players are more prone to have dementia because it hits the brain all the time. And also talk about genetics. So the inheritability of the gene is not that if your father has dementia, therefore you have dementia. No, right? It's the recessive gene. So. But we know that if both parents have dementia, then you have a higher risk, right? And then finally, the diet. We know that sometimes you don't eat certain kind of vitamins, you're more prone. Some years ago, I was referred a patient from a nursing home. They say dementia. Can you find out what you can do? So then I checked and found that the vitamin B12 was low. So just give the vitamin B12, the person improve. So it's very simple, isn't it? So if you know the diet, check on the diet, and all this, the patient can be better. Another patient came to see me also. The husband told me that my wife now is having a bit of dementia, but when I checked, I found that a bit slow in her speech. The movement was very slow, and she has a condition called hypothyroidism, or we call it myxedema. So the hormone in the body drops, lowers as one grow older. So just give thyroxine, the hormone patient come back again. I'll let people know that dementia is a very powerful diagnosis. It's not to be taken very lightly. It's very serious. So I tell the medical students, the doctors, you've got to make sure you got to diagnose well, and make sure you get the right diagnosis. Because once you have a label hang around your neck, and well, there are many things you can't do. Right? I had one doctor with dementia. I told him that you cannot drive. Wow, he was so upset at me. He's like, I want to drive. Look here, you're a danger not only to the people on the road, to yourself, and actually hit somebody, accidentally, not far from here, the junction here, because the reaction time is slow, right? So, and also, once you have a more severe dementia, then you have no mental capacity to sign documents, checks and all that, and therefore we need to protect them, and therefore we need to have a lasting power of attorney, someone who will take care of you, all right? So this was something that was we discussed some years ago. One of the senior cabinet minister had dementia, and they wonder what happened now. He has no children, and so we thought maybe in future we should introduce something to help people who have this phenomenon. So that's why the LPA has come out now. Now, how many of you have done the LPA? Great, wonderful. When it first came out, because I was tasked by the ministry to train the doctors to assess, so I thought I must well apply myself, But when I first started, you must pay $50, So I paid that. Then after training, after about 4 or 5 years, I asked the Office of Public Guardian, he's quite a strong Christian man, Mr. Daniel Koh. So I asked Daniel, how many people have picked up? He said, very few, So then tell the government, make it free. Free, more people come, that's good. But now it's free, the government, hey, are you coming, just start the $50 again. With some money, So you can, it's very important, all right? Sometimes I go to court, because the family quarrel, unfortunately, and then they'll say, well, this person has so much money, somebody want to control the money, which son or daughter want to control. Do it properly, then there'll be less problem, Okay. Okay, so some of you may remember, how many have seen the old Woodbridge Hospital? Wow, that's right. It's a huge mental hospital, and they call it an asylum, Just look at that. It's a huge mental hospital. So when I first came, I thought, wow, it looks like a cage, Patient cannot, so the first paper was published when I was working down there. I looked at the people, and then you ask yourself, who are the people who would want to go to a mental hospital, patients with dementia? People who are restless, people agitated, So they bring them in the hospital, lock them up there. Then if you do a study on dementia in the hospital, it's a very biased sample, isn't it? Then you got conclusion that dementia, aggressive, dangerous, homicidal. It's not true, because this is a wrong place to do a research. But the paper was published, and I tell people we shouldn't do this type of study in the community, in the hospital. We should go in the community. Because I've looked after, in fact, I look after patients for even young patients with bipolar and schizophrenia for the last 50 years, and no one has assaulted me. Yeah. None of the patients insulted me. I once had a group of medical students, bigger than this, and after the lecture was over, one of them came to see me. He was he says, you look quite down. He said, well, I'm quite down because my mother is more down, more upset. He said, why? Because next week we are going to those days, Woodbridge Hospital for training. I said, why? He said, my mother is afraid, I may be assaulted or molested, It's a lady, So I said, tell your mother, there is more violence outside the wall of Woodbridge than inside, The patient inside are all well sedated, They're not aggressive anymore. There's more violence outside. So, but there's all this misconception about violence, mental illness equals violence. So many years ago, when I was working in Woodbridge, I went through all the cases of murders in Singapore. If there's a murder in Singapore, that person must be assessed by a psychiatrist. Because if a murder and is found to be murder of the first degree, means you purposely will kill the person, then the penalty will be death. So you have to be very sure that this person is a murder of the first degree. It's not just a second-degree murder. But second-degree murder is called manslaughter. Right? Maybe having an illness, then he kills somebody. So when I look at all the cases and I analyze them, less than 10% of murders in Singapore were committed by people with mental illness. The rest of 90% of normal people, murders in Singapore, and the murders often occurred around drinking places. All right, then the fellows be like gangsters, they take out a gun and shoot each other. Those are murders. So I tell people that people with mental health problems or people with psychiatric problems, they're not dangerous. They're all, Okay, then we did about now 40 years ago, we did the first study in Singapore we were part of the World Health Team for the global study of dementia. So in 1985, the World Health Organization wanted to find the whole world, because at that time it was mainly in Europe that the Europeans want to find out more about parts of the world. And we did the study, it was at Chinatown, because in 1985 there was no NUH, there was no National University Hospital. All of us were Singapore General Hospital. That's where the medical school was. So it was quite near Chinatown. You can just walk over there and do the research. It's quite easier for us. And but you see, Chinatown of 1985 and today is so different. Those days, the smell a bit different. There's more Cantonese speaking, a bit of Teochew. Now it's all modern Chinese. The Shandong people taken over all this, and it's all spruced up, so clean now. All right, but the research in that study itself tell us that the phenomenon of dementia was only about 4%. People above 65 years old, only 4% of dementia. That means that 96% don't have dementia. That's the good news, isn't it? Everyone thought you grow old, you have dementia. But no, it's only about 4%, But what was higher was depression. Depression rate was high, right? But then because we did quite fast, we were invited to speak at the United Nations to tell the people about this change, that not everybody, have dementia, and how in Asia, this is our Asian data. We did the study in Singapore, and anyone has read this book besides Arthur? Sorry. Listening to Letter from America. Kelvin, you never read this book, huh? Wow, so tragic, man. Right? There's only one novel in Singapore used in Harvard University, and this is novel. And in 1985, when I did the study, we had no money for research, so I have to personally go and interview them, old people at Chinatown. Every one of them, I remember 612, every one of them, and you do research. In 1985, the clinics in the polyclinic has no aircon, only a fan. Then so one day in the clinic itself, an elderly woman came in, and it's a Sansui woman. You could wear the red caps, and then I saw on her left arm there's a slash, an old scar. So I asked her, where did you get a scar from? She said, during the war years I was running, and the Japanese took a sword and slashed my left arm. Well, that sent a chill up my spine. Wow, this woman. So then I asked her, how did it happen? Then he went on. That everybody that came to my clinic, I asked them, tell me your war stories. Then the research became more interesting. Rather than, have you got hypertension? Have you got diabetes? Check them, the muscles, and tell me, as I'm examining, tell me the story. They'll tell me the story. Then there was one retired doctor. I still remember Dr. Tan, almost 82 years old. He told me he was almost blind, you know. He cannot watch television, but he enjoys listening to the BBC program called Letter from America, because the journalist at that time was Alistair Cook. Alistair Cook would tell people every Sunday at 1:45 about America. And at that time was Bill Clinton, then the sports, football, baseball, whatever it is, you know, any kind of war, he'll tell them, you know. And he went on for 15 minutes. And he'd be doing that from 1946 until he died. You know. So it's the longest reader program. So he said, this doctor said, this man inspired him, because at age of 90, you still be on BBC. So I said, that's good, you know, because to tell people about the misconception that you grow old, you are of no relevance, you can go retire, go somewhere. But this Alistair Cook was still telling the world, you know, on BBC. So I took all the stories together, I put it into a book called Listening to Letter from America. All right. So besides Arthur, who else? David, you read it? You read it, okay. Two only, yeah. Nobody else. So after it was used in Harvard, there's a lady who lived not far from here, I think. What's her name? Stella Corn. She wrote a book called Emily in Emerald Hill. Oh, yeah, right. Then she read the book, said, hey, can we make a musical out of it? So she made a musical, you know, or she called it Undefeated, she called it Unforgotten, you know, right? But from the research, the World Health Studies research, there are about 200 questions. This kind of thing cannot be used in the clinics, you know. So from there, we took down 10 questions that we think can be used by the doctors when they assess you. Because the doctors are only about 5 minutes, 3 minutes, isn't it? You go to polyclinic, you know. Yeah? And so, so one question I often ask them, so we ask them about, do you all know what's the date today? But the date, the day, the month, and the year. Very important. It is from this date and time that we lay down our memory. All right. So sometimes I tell my patient, oh, today is December. What is coming up? What festival? Oh, Christmas. After Christmas, the New Year. New Year, what? Chinese New Year. So this is how we remember things. All right. So always remember that. You know. So you have family members with dementia. Early in the morning, you tell them the day and date, the month, the year. We call it reality orientation therapy, ROT, ROT. But it's a very good phenomenon. Everybody was in England. We start a clinic for seniors. The nurse will run through the day, the date, the month, the year, and before you leave, the same thing. All right. Very important. That's how you remember things and the progression, you know, in our lives. You know, the day you remember the time you were in primary school, you went on secondary school, you work. So all those are laid down. You know. The sequence of it is how memory is been measured on. You know. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you a 4-digit number, and later I'm going to ask you all again. In this the World Health, they want a 4-digit, you know, because beginning they said, have you seen a questionnaire your doctors may ask you? It's called the mini mental state. There's some of you may have gone through it. The mini mental state was designed in Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, America, and they asked people to spell the word world backwards. So they asked me to use it in Singapore. I said my elderly people at Chinatown can't even spell the word world forward. You ask them to spell back. So no relevance. So we have something simple, yeah, right? So, okay, the number is 4517. I can ask you again, yeah, right? So something that you can remember. So it's in this questionnaire. So if you are from Malaysia, so because in Malaysia, many Malays go to Mecca for their pilgrimage, and in the summer it's very, very hot. And if you have someone with mild dementia, you go up to the the Arabian Peninsula, and the heat is so high that you're dehydrated. And if you have mild symptoms of dementia, you can become delirious. So the Malaysian minister said, every Malay above 50 years old must be assessed. Then the doctor said, wow, so difficult to assess. They say, hey, borrow the thing from Singapore. Ask Professor Kua, you're Malaysian, you can borrow for free. So those days, we never thought, well, we're just socialists now. Okay, I'll take it away. So everybody in Malaysia, if you want 50 years for Malays, they must use this questionnaire, a 10-item questionnaire. Very simple. Can you remember the 4 number again? Wow. Good. So all of you are what we call compos mentis. Compos mentis is the Latin word for sound mind. All right. All right. So some of you may remember there's a center of SAGE. SAGE, a research center called SAGE Center, and it was the brainchild of Dr. Lim Chan Yong. Do anyone know Dr. Lim Chan Yong from Serangoon Gardens area here? Yes? So he's a very nice person, very staunch Christian, right? And we worked together and we wrote a book called A Ripe Old Age, tell people there's so much thing can do. And he started at the Maud Road, near Chinatown area, ping pong, ballroom dancing, Chinese opera for the people around there. And also from that, we also did a study, and it was at the time that we did a study on caregivers. It was almost 20 over years now that I realized that the memory clinic in NUH, I tell people it's for assessment of memory. Not many people will come. People will come only when the caregiver is under stress. When a person has dementia, cannot sleep the whole night, the fellow said, oh, this is a problem now. If you have a memory problem and you don't have a sleep problem, you're not agitated, you do not complain that people are stealing your money, then it's okay. But if you can complain of people stealing your money, you complain of hearing voices, hallucination, all right, then they will come. All right. So we found the caregivers under tremendous stress. In fact, there's one of the NUS students who graduated in a newspaper, then looked after the mother, dementia, became so depressed that she took her life. She jumped. Yeah. So it's very, very sad. You don't know where to seek help. So we started a memory clinic in almost 35 years ago, and we decided maybe we should have a lot of. In England, the memory clinic is run by the geriatrician. So I told them maybe in Singapore we must have one beside the geriatrician, the psychiatrist, also the psychologist, and also the neurologist and the nurses. 5 people. So it's a very strong team. No other teams in the world have that kind of strong team. So people from Australia came to see what we're doing, and there's a lot of data. So in Singapore we can do it now. But we don't have to wait for the Americans to come and do it. It's difficult. In fact, I gave a lecture, and I told the minister sitting down there was the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Teo Chee Hean. I told him that everybody, that nationally Singaporeans, sometimes we have low self-esteem. We are not good enough. We wait for the fellow to tell us, there are a lot of ideas. All right? Whatever they have in America, I work in America, in terms of technology, in terms of brain scan, we have it here. What you need is new ideas, all right? And I'm sure we as one of our colleagues, Kishore, wrote a book called Can Asian Think? Right. Yes, you must say yes, right? You should be able to think. And from that research here, we were able to get massive data of people. And when I was the World Health Team, before we started the research, the team assembled at Cambridge, England, and there was a very big man, Professor Sir Martin Roth, So I asked Sir Martin, if I diagnose dementia, how long would a person live? He told me 5 years. But when I look at the NUH data, much longer. The average is about 12 years. Average, I look after one of the surgeons or the professor went on for 17 years, right? And there are 3 phases. There's a mild phase, about 6 years, a moderate phase, about 3 years, and severe, about 3 years. All right. So this is very important. It's the first study published in the world about the natural history of dementia. So if you have someone who a family member with dementia, at least you know how to plan, all right? So I tell people that dementia is not a critical illness, it is a chronic illness. Right? So family can plan, and you tell people that if they are at this mild phase, if you can do many things, you can prolong it and a good quality of life. You don't, they plunge down very fast, all right? Okay? And so this site, this is before it comes on up here. This is the pre-dementia phase. So the research at the Jurong area is mainly at this phase before you cross into the red line into dementia, the pre-dementia phase. Can you prevent them from dropping over to dementia, which is very important, right? So those at the back, can you see these 2 X-ray? Can you all see? They're called, these 2 is called, unfortunately, Kelvin is a bit small here, I do the screen there. These 2 X-ray, these are called the PET scan. PET scan is a bit more expensive than the MRI brain scan. PET scan is called positron emission tomography, a big term, PET. It's very expensive, It measures the glucose uptake of your brain. Glucose uptake means the part of the brain that works most now, very hard. So this is the front of the brain here. The front is here, the back is here. So you see the back of the brain is working very hard, a lot of red area, And if I were to do a PET scan of anyone in this room, it should be, the rate is very high, because you're looking at me, isn't it? All right? If you've fallen asleep, then I know. So it should be red here, all right? So this is a normal person, all right? This is a normal. This one is someone with dementia, Alzheimer's disease. So you see this Alzheimer's disease. But you see, even in Alzheimer's disease, there's some areas of red area, isn't it? Yeah. So this is very important finding, right? Some years ago, about 25 years ago, I also sit in the World Health team. The World Health team was a group of people to tell the doctors what are the criteria for diagnosis. If you diagnose dementia, Alzheimer's type, these are the criteria, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, memory, the behavior of that. Then, or you have someone with bipolar, these are the criteria. Or else people in the world diagnose whichever way they want. So the World Health has got a team, and it's called it's part of the International Classification of Diseases. But before that, they say that dementia is an illness in which there's a global degeneration of the brain. So I tell the people that grow health, I told the chairman that it cannot be global. You should take away the word global. Just the impairment of brain function, because many parts of the brain are still working. So even if we have a mild or moderate or severe dementia, it can still trigger this part of the brain, and the person the quality of life can be better. So even if we have a friend or a relative or mother or father with dementia, don't give it up and say, there's nothing I can do. Talk about therapeutic nihilism, there's nothing I can do. There are many things we can do. Can be water there. So I remember once in England, in a walk round, someone would say, "Oh, that's dementia. You're all vegetable, So the consultant is very angry. Yeah, there are different kinds of vegetables, And I always tell my doctors here, even if you go to a walk round and if someone with dementia, just spend some time and chat with them. Even people with cancer, sometimes they'll say, "Oh, that cancer, there's nothing we can do." No, have a chat with them. They've got their feelings, Some people with dementia, I remember looking after a surgeon. Some of you know him, very well-known surgeon, professor. And he went on for 17 years. And the week before he passed away, he was admitted to NUH. And When I went in to see him, I've been a doctor for more than 10 years. He couldn't recognize me, He couldn't recognize me. I tell him so-and-so, no, he couldn't. But when the wife walked into the room, softly, she didn't say a single word, The wife walked in, She called her name. I was shocked, man. So I asked the wife, how do you remember your name? You just walk in here. You know what she told me? It's my perfume. Yeah. The same perfume she used since they've been married for the last 40 years now. The same perfume. All right. So women here, don't change your perfume, huh? You will confuse your husband. So just to say that when people have dementia, some part of the brain is still functioning well and they can still remember. Sometimes music. So this particular surgeon was interesting because one day he was very restless, agitated. Then the wife rang me and said, well, Dr. Kua, his house is quite near to Raffles Girls' School, as my daughter was studying there. He said, if you are picking up your daughter in the evening, can you come to my house just to see him? So I said, okay, I'll drop in for 6 o'clock. When I entered his condominium, I found that he was very quiet. But the background was the music of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. It's one of my favorite music. So I asked him, what is it about Moonlight Sonata? You seem so interested. And he said, well, you know that you could still talk to me. I think it was 1952. He was one of the first person in Singapore to pass the exam for surgery, the Royal College of Surgeons exam. So I was so happy, Then I went down to central London to the Whitmore Hall, bought a ticket down there, and the chap down there was playing the Moonlight Sonata. So this music reminded him 50 years back of London in 1952. So he think about that, he calmed down. So the music itself, a calming effect, we call it music reminiscence. So later on, I will show you the choral singing, the music. So we did a study on music over the Jurong area, and for people walking down there, and the music they chose was Ten Li Jin. The moon represents my heart, right? All right. I think I'll ask David to sing it. I'm sure he can sing. So because it's not just a song. They say they reminded him of their days when they're in school, what they were doing, their childhood. So it's all these things that's interesting. Okay, let me press on quickly. So when we in the dementia study, we found that a lot of data. So we found someone said that what kind of diet should we introduce to the elderly in Singapore? So someone said, what about the Mediterranean diet? That kind of diet Arthur would like be an olive, be a wine now and then. But how many people in Singapore enjoy just eating olive? And others said, what about Okinawan diet, sushi and all that? But that's what they say, the people there live a long life. So I told them, come on, you fellows, these are typical of them, the Singaporeans. Everything must be overseas. So I said, what about there's nothing wrong with the Singapore diet. So we mentioned that. So what we did was, at that time we were doing the research at Jurong Point. So I told the Jurong Point, there's a restaurant called Malaysia Boleh. So we asked the boss down there, over here, there's a man here, Tan Fei Siong. So Fei Siong came. So I told him, Fei Siong, these people are always complaining the food is not very good. So I told them, why not, if they want to have the Penang Char Kway Teow, have less sauce or less salt, and more tauge vegetables, Oh, that can be done, But you can reduce some of this salt and sugar and it's something that we enjoy, Rather than we must have olive, The people's life, the quality of life, isn't it? Some years ago at NUH, my cousin, my relative, is advanced cancer. He was about to pass on. Then I went to visit him and asked him, hey, you didn't finish the food, NUH food. He said, have you tasted my food? I said, the food is so bland, low salt diet and all that. So when the consultant came in and said, hey, this food, why do all this low salt diet? This fellow has not much time to live, And in fact, it was actually the chef who came in and said, yes, it's not my fault, it's the consultant who said that, the chef. So after they've gone, I asked him, what do you want? He said, what? Some siu mai. Okay, went down there, bought them char siu pao. We enjoy. Yeah, I think about 2 more weeks to live. You worry about. Anyway, you want char kway teow, give char kway teow. Oh. So I think they make some changes now in NUH. Let me have the same kind of food, So, being a Teochew, I'm very partial towards steamed fish, pomfret, and Arthur knows that, And so some people love asam pedas, wow, also very good, very healthy food, And anyone from Batu Pahat here, by the way? Nobody. Oh, how tragic, man. Yeah. Well, Batu Pahat, we had recently one of our professors went down there. He asked me, "Hey, what is so famous down there?" I said, "There's a Wantan mee was very famous for over 50 years." Then I said, well, you can just don't have to ask so much. Just ask half of the noodles, more vegetables. That is interesting, isn't it? And also in our research, we found that a certain kind of tea, like tea is good for less deterioration of cognitive functions. So this person, Dr. Fen Lei, worked with us. Become very famous now of papers, and then we publish a paper for the people in our research. People who have curry have less cognitive impairment because curry has turmeric and curcumin, a strong antioxidant. And this paper was published in the New York Times, apparently. My friends in America said, wow, we learned that curry is from your site. So research is very important. And people want evidence-based research. And someone did studies on mushroom and fermented beans, Professor Harrywell. So these are things that we do that some people know it, but they still want the research evidence to show that it's helpful. All right, so we thought we would launch this study, and it was over at the Jurong study, a 10-year study, and so you see that we have on the right side is Professor Goligan. I think he worshipped at Barker Road side then, right? And myself, and it was conceived about almost 20 years ago. But it took a long time because we had no funding, right? But we thought that we know that if we tell people about health education, talk about controlling hypertension, diabetes, if we're able to do some exercise, music, and also mindfulness practice, If any one of the published paper in the world news journal, you must think of new ideas, and you must tell them things that no one has done before. We thought mindfulness should be interesting because mindfulness improves your concentration. You can concentrate well, then you can remember well. The whole circuitry of memory depends on 3 levels: concentration, storage, and recovery. This whole circuitry is called memory. So for people with dementia, storage is problematic. But for young people, students, it's always a concentration. Not enough sleep or stress, they cannot concentrate well. You can improve the concentration, all of you, very good concentration. All of still remember the 4-digit? All right. You can concentrate well, store in your brain, you can take it out, all right. I remember once I was in the clinic, the lady before she left my clinic, she asked me again, she couldn't tell me she had very early dementia. She couldn't remember 4517. So I told her that, okay, before she left my clinic, I said, it is 4517. Then she went back home. When she came for review in 2 weeks' time, she said, doctor, I must invite you for a lunch. I said, why? I got second prize, 4 digits. So the dean of medicine was upset. How can he encourage gambling? So All right, so you was at the Jurong Point Mall. I'm sure you have been to the mall, the biggest mall. The owner was the late Mr. Lee Sun Tek, also a Methodist, and it was wonderful. He gave us space. The rental's about $7,000. He said he'll pay for it and give us $1 million for our study. And that's Mr. Lee Sun Tek. He passed away, a wonderful man of God. And there was Lawrence Wee, also Presbyterian Church, and Lim Boon Heng, a minister. And there was the young Arthur, all right, here, sitting here now. And Mr. Lee's son was unfortunately passed on. And what we did was around Jurong area, we have 1,000 people. The nurse would knock the door about 50 blocks. Anyone above 60 years old, come down, to Jurong Point, and the assessment is free. The MRI brain scan is free. It's each person is almost about $2,000. So a lot of people donate money to this research, and so we did something on mindfulness. It does improve the brain. So this is the first study done in the world on elderly people, and also we found that mindfulness also improved the bacteria in our gut. Our intestine has a lot of good bacteria and bad bacteria. The bad bacteria causes diarrhea and fever. The good bacteria secretes chemical in the brain called serotonin. Makes you feel better, happier. And also we did something on the telomeres, the genetics, that I think I better rush through quickly because. And also, this was choral singing. Choral singing, this lady here is Professor Maureen Sarkok. She went on a conference, and then suddenly she had what they call transient global amnesia. Suddenly, a total memory was wiped off, It was very frightened. People brought her back home. Then, being quite a clever girl, she would read all about how to improve the brain. Then she found that something about singing is helpful. Choral singing, choir. So I'm glad the churches have got choir, So we have, that's why from there, the choir, the people from the Jurong area, and they have two groups, one was choral singing, one was health education, and the choral singing went on very well. Before they did the choral singing, we scanned the brain, MRI brain scan. After 6 months, after 1 year, this is the first study in the world. Our friends from Harvard and London came down and joined us for this study. It's fantastic. And then after that, the media calls me a program of this about choir singing is good to prevent dementia. I want to move on quickly. Next one is art to improve mental health. This idea came from a friend, Professor Tommy Koh. So one day he rang me and said, "Hey, there's a report in the New York Times that painting is good, for people with dementia." And so I told him, "Tommy, I'm here in New York. I can go and see." In New York, it's a museum called the Museum of Modern Art. And a friend told me, "Oh, I know the CEO of the museum. I can tell him that." And when I went down there to MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, the group down there, and there were the people with dementia, and they were showing the original paintings of Picasso. Whoa, they went down there, and the original painting of Sunflower, Vincent van Gogh. But then I tell myself, I don't think my Jurong elderly will Picasso, So I thought maybe you should something that's more closer to what we do. So once again, but the New York study, there's no brain scan. All right, it's just question paper. Are you feeling happier after seeing Picasso and all that? Okay. But in Singapore, we are something more biological. So we did a brain scan. So it's expensive. Once again, the first study here. So I used the paintings which are more familiar. Have anyone seen this painting in the National Gallery? Wonderful. What's the name of the painting? The painting is called Apa Nama Awak. So in the Jurong side, so people will know it, or you ask some of my friends or medical people, you tell them this painting, they know that it is Singapore in 1963 or 64. Because at that time, Singapore was part of Malaysia, isn't it? All of you know that, huh? I asked some of my medical students, do you know Singapore part of Malaysia? They said, "Prof, are you kidding us?" These are the top students of Singapore, the top elite school. I said, your knowledge of history is appalling. You may be the top with straight A's, but history, forgotten. How sad, yeah. You're right. So yeah, and I told them, look here, look at this picture, that these are students attending a tutorial class on Malay, and so they're so well dressed. They come here, even Chong Sam, this lady, nowadays you take students for tutorial or lectures, they come in singlet and shorts and slippers, slippers. You're right. And you're not supposed to say anything against them, because now there's feedback. You tell them, go back and change, you give a low score. So once I told a student, a professor who was going for exam, because of the examiner, professor was promoting from associate professor to full prof, we need to be assessed his teaching. So I told the students, can you all keep quiet? They were all talking at the back, use your handphone. I said, this professor is having an exam. I'm the examiner, can you all keep quiet for a while? At the end of it, the professor was so happy and said, well, I'm so glad you quietened down and speak better. But then he said, now, there's a feedback from them. They might give me a low score and I get no promotion. So I told the dean, I think we are held to ransom by these students. All right. Not very good, So, okay, so we see the very important data. If you have fallen asleep at the back, time to wake up, this is a very important data. This is the 10 years of all our research, or 5 years, that the dementia rate from the Ministry of Health is 10%, here is only 3%. Remember that, 3%. The depression rate, about 9%, is half depression. All right, depression drops, then the suicide rate will go down. So this is the first study in Asia. It's been discussed in the World Health Conference. The people told us that, okay? But then my friends told me in the university, if you tell people that it has dropped from 10% to 3% for dementia, no one is really interested in that. You must tell the ministry. They say you must monetize your research. Now it's all, monetize the research. And so I talked to the people at the NTU, Professor Houston Kua, he also works at Barker Road, and he said, let's do some calculation, and then we came for this calculation, all right? So the Ministry of Health says that about 10%, it means today you have 100,000 cases. If you do the Jurong study, it's 3%, it's 30,000 cases. Use the same for whole country. The cost per patient for dementia is about 12,000. This was done by medical students. So if you multiply the 12,500 and 70,000, the number is phenomenal. $840 million you'll save. Oh, then ministries, people are very happy. Can you invite us for coffee to discuss how we can use it? All right. I think I might want to have a break because I can see that some of you are in a restive mood. Is caffeine withdrawal. All right, just one more slide. So from there, we extend it to the community, all right? Because whatever study you do in Jurong is of no relevance, you stay in Jurong. Can it be extended to Katong, Woodlands, Queenstown, so it's going very far, Kwang Ming San, Tam Kan Gat, so it's great. We have a break for them, all right.